we're talking about technology and how technology will improve everything, but I want to jump back a couple of years here real quick because Mark, you have a pretty big background in ham radio, and I want you to kind of explain to our viewers how ham radio works in weather and how they can get involved in it. And Dr. Scala, I know James Spann has spoken many times on the podcast Weather Brains about, he used to do ham radio stuff. That's how he got involved in weather. But Mark, talk about how ham radio in the weather enterprise could still be a valuable thing even now in 2019.
Sure. And I haven't been involved in it that long, but long enough to have, discovered some of the reasons why we still use it. And up in our area, I'm in Minnesota, we don't have a lot of tornado outbreaks, but we have our share. And so our spotter network in our area utilizes ham radio still as our primary means of communication, while we also use, these devices and the texting and the other ways that you can get in contact with the National Weather Service and with each other. Ham radio is still the primary use, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, it's very reliable. And generally, it works all the time. For the most part, most of the repeaters and the things, a repeater is a location or a radio that everybody can reach, right? Everybody reaches the repeater, and then that sends a signal out to everybody else. So it's that group communications over amateur radio. And those units are up all the time. They have generators, they have all those kinds of things. And when you're in your car, mobile, and you're spotting, you can more easily use a radio than you can trying to text. Obviously, we don't want people doing that, right? And we don't want people trying to bring up things on their, especially just a storm spotter who's by themselves, doesn't have anybody else with them navigating or helping them like a spotter or like a chaser might have. So it gives you that advantage of being able to pick up the radio and make an immediate contact without having to dial anything, without having to really think about it. You just bring that microphone up, and you can do hands-free too with amateur radio as well, which a number of people do. So I think from that standpoint, it's safe, it's easy to use, and you can talk to everybody right away. And in our area, the National Weather Service still monitors the regional repeaters where the storm spotting groups are using. So it's one central point of communication. And I think that's, one of the advantages to it. And the crowd using it's getting older. We're having a hard time getting younger people involved in it, but I think it's still a viable communications method that works really well for reporting storm conditions. Again, everybody hears it. Everybody knows what's going on. At least everybody that's, on the network at the time.
You mentioned how the National Weather Service uses ham radio. We have a story that our panelist James Brierton put together a few years ago that talks about how the Weather Service does that.
A tornado coming down out of the clouds and almost to the ground level.
When the weather is at its worst.
South of Yule Road, it's probably getting close to 35 right now.
Everyday citizens using radio communications act as foot soldiers for the National Weather Service.
Play a vital role in helping us to monitor what's really happening on the ground. Because as I said, we only see what's up in the storm clouds, so we really need that verification to know what's happening on the ground, to let other people know, maybe they're downstream of the storm, what they can anticipate.
Forecasters still prefer real people over today's technology.
This is the Georgia Amateur Radio Emergency Service Net.
Robert Burton receives incoming radio messages for the Weather Service.
The radar can only see so much. I mean, it cannot see the actual tornado on the ground, and that's where the eyes and ears of Skywarn comes into play.
Skywarn spotters are the name of volunteers watching and reporting the weather. From where Robert sits in Peachtree City, he can talk with radio operators across the state. One of them is Huey Kenmar.
The guy sitting on top of a hill saw a tornado and was giving us the exact place it was and where it was headed.
And when all else fails, radio operators say they are among the most dependable.
There are many times we'll have storm spotters in the field that will not have cell phone coverage in a particular area. However, they will have ham radio coverage.
A tornado.
Certainly a valuable resource that still is used today and probably will be used for many years to come.